Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind of reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega, and we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and courage. And George, it's good to see you. It's good to be with you. And this is a very interesting program, I think, happiness and courage. Okay, how does courage fit into the whole dynamic of happiness?
Okay, I think in a few ways. Let's start off with the idea that our society, our culture, doesn't value happiness very much. You know, we value money, success, prestige, education, knowledge, all these. So, we have to be a bit of a pioneer, a bit of an iconoclast, an individual, to say to ourselves, we're going for happiness. You know, other people may not value it, society may not value it that much, but we think it's very important. And it takes courage to do that.
Yes, it does. That's true. I think it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever really thought about courage and happiness. And I think that there's some components to courage that make it very interesting. I mean, there's some, it's being courageous enough to maybe in some ways even overcome yourself, which may take the most amount of courage when it comes to being happy. Yeah,
it's overcoming oneself, and in a way I think it's also like developing a kind of a faith that, you know, what we're trying to do is possible. It is like these kinds of fears that we have about, you know, becoming happier. They're not founded in anything that's substantial. You know, we may have them, but we have to realize that they're just they're fears, and they're not really threats.
That's a good point, George, because I always say that fear is the opposite of happiness, not unhappiness. Unhappiness is a result of fear, really, and I think you've really hit a very good point, and that is that when we're afraid, we really block off our ability to be happy, and we're counteractive to making the best happen for ourselves and to see the best in ourselves. So we are naturally stopping the flow of happiness from ourselves to begin with. So we can't ever experience it because of our fear. That's
a very good point, because what happens is when we're in a state of fear, our body is reflecting that fear. Our muscles are tense, and as our muscles are tense, the nerves can't pass through as easily, and that creates that kind of an anxious state where it's very difficult to feel anything. So a great component in courage is that as we become courageous, our muscles will follow our mind. You know, our muscles will just relax. We'll recognize that our mind isn't afraid, so there's no reason for our muscles and our bodies to express that.
Yeah, you know, I feel like doing one of those Marine Corps advertisements, you know. Be strong, be one of the few, be happy.
Yeah, that's good. That's true.
I mean, because that's what it comes down to. There's so few happy people, and because it takes great courage. You know, sometimes you get laughed at, sometimes family says, what are you so happy about? And part of it could be, well, what right have you got to be happy when I'm not happy? Right. You know, things like that.
Yeah. And actually, you know, there are about 20% of us. 20% of us are either courageous or lucky or whatever, but 20% of us are 85% happy or happier. So they've succeeded. And I mean, we see them everywhere. You know, we see them out on the street among our friends. They're generally more relaxed, more social. You know, they're generally more successful, because happier people tend to be that. And we can look to them for inspiration. You know, this person can do it. Obviously, if so many people can be very happy, then we can all be extremely happy.
I agree. If one person can do something, then you know, the fact is that if that person can accomplish it, the possibility exists for all of us too, and we just have to maybe model the person, understand what they're doing to create this you know, success in their life. And I think happiness is a success, one that we have, but we don't we don't make use of. I think of it as almost like if you had $1 million or hundreds of thousands of dollars in your wallet and you didn't know it was in there, it wouldn't do you any good. And I think happiness is just like that. You've got it within you, but most of us act as if we don't know where it is, and we're off looking for it in the wrong places.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually, that has to do with memory, and we're going to do a show on that. Now, getting back to that point you raised to begin the show, what is it that we have to use courage for?
Yes.
I think we have to remember that our main source of happiness for most of us is other people. And in order to derive that happiness from other people, we have to have the courage to initiate relationships, to begin relationships, to take the risk of introducing ourselves, of putting ourselves out there. Because obviously when there are strangers, when we don't know someone, we're going to be afraid that they'll hurt our feelings. We're afraid that we'll hurt their feelings. And it takes courage. It takes courage and faith to overcome that fear, to develop the relationships that eventually will make us much happier.
That's a very good point, George, because we are still looking, a thing like friendship, for example, we still have that fear factor where, gee, there's something we might do or something we might say where all of a sudden I've got this good friend, and now that you realize, all right, the person's a good friend, now what do you worry about? You worry about losing a good friend, because a good thing is something you could fear losing, and like other things. So the courage comes in to live your life in such a way as to be happy, I like to say no matter what, because that works for you rather than against you. But it still takes great courage to almost state your happiness, to keep practicing it, because you will be tempted and tested by people who, I hate to say they want to undermine your happiness. Maybe it's just that they don't understand it because they're not happy. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think what happens is that, if you're very happy and you're communicating or relating to someone who's not as happy, a lot of times they don't know how to relate on that level, so it's like they're not really intentionally trying to bring you down. But if they're relating from a level of less happiness, that's naturally, potentially going to happen. Now, the good thing about happiness is that as we become happier, we become more courageous, because we know that when happy people approach us, we're very open, we're receptive, we'll accept them, we're friendly, we're kind, we're nice. And we, as we become happier, we know that when we approach people, they will accept us, that we're all the same, we're receptive to happiness, and that happiness gives us the courage to reach out to others.
Okay, so that's interesting. So we need courage to find our own sense of happiness, and then the happiness itself can give us courage. I like that interesting thing. So it's would you say, an upward spiral? It feeds in a positive way, and it's it's a positive
self-actualization.
Self-actualization. It's working for you rather than against you. And I think the other thing about courage that I find such a tie into happiness is we've talked about self-esteem and happiness, and I think courage could help us with self-esteem. And I think that's another thing. Then we're there for ourselves, and we start deriving the benefits of really standing up for ourselves. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Oh, yeah. And also, again, since people are such a potent source of happiness for us, then what happens is, we become courageous enough to establish the relationships, then we can take it further. Then it takes courage to get closer to the person, to expose ourselves, to tell things about ourselves, to draw them out, to develop the relationship so it gets closer, because generally, as relationships get more intimate and close, they get more pleasant. So, and it takes courage to go from having just a casual relationship acquaintance to having a closer, more meaningful, and much more pleasant relationship. And again, the happiness, if we're keeping as our focus, as our goal, continued happiness, more happiness, that really provides great incentive to bear whatever fears, whatever may come in the way of that stand in the way of our doing that.
George, this is true. And the other thing that comes to my mind is as we develop closer associations, closer relationships with not only those who we love, but anyone, anyone we come in contact with, and we have a relationship, whether it's saying good morning at work or something further than that, what we're doing with being courageous with happiness is we're also not being afraid, we're being courageous. And it leads us, that kind of happiness leads us to being appreciative of the other person. Like you might not only say good morning, but you might say, oh, that's a very nice tie. As a matter of fact, here's a thought. As I was coming to the studio today, the first person I encountered after I saw my wife this morning was I stopped off at the Merritt Parkway, and I was just stopping off for one moment, and it's snowing and the paths are kind of plowed, so I just got out of the way to a gentleman that was walking by, and I just said good morning, and so courage had me say good morning to a perfect stranger, and the perfect stranger looked up at me, and instead of saying good morning or anything else, he just said nice tie. And I said, well, thank you. And it was nice, it felt good. So courage had me be happy, and maybe the way I said good morning was maybe friendlier and happier than maybe most people might, I don't know. But certainly his response was one of appreciation. And that appreciation tied in with my courage to be happy. And then the appreciation instigates further happiness, further association, further deepening of relationships. And I think that's why courage is behind this. We're not courageous enough to deepen our relationships. And at work, that's a problem, because we're always afraid of what the other person's going to do. That's why happiness and courage go hand in hand. The heck with what the other person's going to do. You do it first.
Sure. And then there are many times where we find ourselves not interacting with others, we're by ourselves working, doing whatever, and then, or sometimes we're with others, but not necessarily relating to them directly. And so during those times, I think there's another kind of courage that helps us when we interact with others, and also helps us when we're alone, and that's the courage to smile. Now, this isn't just philosophy, it's not just a platitude or a wise saying. This has been studied exhaustively in dozens of studies, starting in the late 70s. They've pretty much documented the smiling, just even when you don't intend to smile, even when you have a pencil in your mouth between your teeth, activating the zygomatic smile muscles, that will induce pleasure. That will induce pleasure. And what happens is, like, when we have the courage to smile, because this is where the courage comes in. A lot of times smiling in society isn't that respected. People will say, hey, why is this person smiling? Because a lot of people don't smile. And so you have to have the courage. You have to have the courage to say, hey, wait a minute, this feels good. Another person may not understand it, but it really feels good, and it feels good enough to do. And what happens is, like, what I've found, because I began to experiment with this on my own with my friends, one's friends, the people you're around, begin to understand it and appreciate it and accept it. It's something that at first might be a bit foreign to people, but it's something that they really do begin to really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think there's a spillover effect. It's like I don't know if it's a positive butterfly effect or something, but they benefit too by association. So your courage uplifts others and allows them the potential. I know you've done a lot of thinking in terms of courage and happiness. Is there any other areas that are brought to mind in terms of benefits or otherwise?
Well, in terms of courage, I think like maybe the essential courage with happiness has to do with the courage to attempt to become happier. Because, I mean, when we're like at a certain level of happiness and we want to become happier, in order to do that, we're going to have to face that level. We can't avoid it by distracting ourselves with activity or something. In order to increase our happiness, we have to see where we are at the time. We have to try to understand why we're not happier, and that calls for
honesty.
Honesty, and it also calls for facing, whatever level of happiness or unhappiness happiness we have, and that's a fearful thing. So
good point. That's a very good point. It's really, the axiom I've heard, to notice a negativity is a positive thing. It depends what you do with that, once you notice it. But I think what you're saying is when you're courageous enough to notice that there's an area that you can improve on, I always think that's cause for celebration. To find an area that you could actually do better. Instead of thinking of it as a fault, you think that, well, now that I'm aware I could do better, why call it a detriment or a fault? I can just now overcome that. I can overcome myself by being more courageous to realize that this is something I can improve. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you've said in the past that courage is the opposite of or that fear is the opposite of happiness, right? And so, if fear is the opposite of happiness, courage is the antidote to that fear.
Wow.
So sure.
Profound.
So oh yeah, because as we begin, and it's like we have to be courageous enough to attempt to become happier, to do the kinds of things that make us happier, like reaching out to people, and then also like our life tends to revolve around goals a lot. We set goals for education, for relationships, for the different kinds of things we want to do, and that takes courage to set goals that aren't too easy, that will inspire us to bring out our best. But I think with these goals, I think it's probably best if we have these goals that we use courage for, but that we keep as our main goal, above all other goals, really, maybe equal with the goal of being as good as we can, to be extremely happy.
Yeah, that's great, George. That's wonderful. And the show goes so quickly. I want to invite our viewers to check out the happinessclub.com website, www.happinessclub.com. They can get more information about our show, about the Happiness Club, free newsletters. I want to invite you to tune in every week to the Happiness Show with George Ortega and myself, Lionel Ketchian. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I really enjoy George's company and wisdom, and I love sharing it with you, and I think there's tremendous benefits to be had. So with that, we're now going to join Amy Branch in San Francisco, and she's in the West Coast for the happiness segment to continue. So we now go over to Amy Branch, who will tell us more about happiness on the West Coast.
Hi, this is Amy Branch reporting from San Francisco. Some of you might have already seen me on George and Lionel's show interviewing a few other people about happiness and their positive perspective. But this time I thought I'd take an opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from and what experiences I've had to make me interested in joining Lionel and George's project. So first, let me just start right into it, my biography. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and let's see, in an upper middle class I was raised in an upper middle class suburb, and my parents didn't go to college though. I didn't get a car when I turned 16. All my friends had that stuff. I was kind of the poor kid in the rich town, but I think it was very character building. And I love my parents very much. They're still together. Very proud of them. Let's see, so I played a lot of volleyball and soccer growing up, and when I was ready to graduate high school, I had a few opportunities for scholarships for the game of soccer, but then I decided that I wasn't quite ready to start my studying yet, and so I worked 3 jobs and bought a car and decided to move to Los Angeles. And I felt like I had California blood, like I had to get to the ocean, like I had to get to the mountains and be in the 70-degree sunny weather. However, when I arrived in Hollywood, it was quite a culture shock for me. I had to deal with homeless people and prostitutes and transvestite prostitutes and gang members and, let's see, the mafia and movie stars, which was a whole new bag of tricks for me. All of those things aren't really located in the suburb of Detroit where I grew up. And I couldn't really handle it eventually. I stayed there about 6 months, and then I moved to Santa Barbara and hoped that I could continue establishing residency so I could go to college in California. However, I decided that I had to go back to Michigan and get my college education there, and then with the idea of returning to California after that. So I went to Michigan State University, and ultimately, through a lot of trials and tribulations, I deduced that I wanted to pursue a degree in industrial and organizational psychology because I felt that working with individuals who were functioning was a good thing for me, and also all I really wanted to do was make people happy. And I figured that a lot of people are working in an environment where they're not very happy 40 to 60 hours a week. So if I could go in to the organization and help the employees be happy, then I would be fulfilling my goals. So let's see, so I graduated eventually and moved to San Francisco approximately a month or so after I graduated, and that made me really happy. And about 2 weeks after I came to San Francisco, I started working in a job in a large financial services company on the trading floor, and that was really exciting. I was a human resources liaison between the people on the trading floor and the human resources department, and I was informally referred to as the happiness coordinator, which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for me. It was a lot of fun with the people I worked with. Then I also concurrently decided to go to graduate school, and so I'm pursuing right now my PhD in organizational psychology, continuing along the industrial and organizational psychology track. However, my focuses are leadership and positive psychology, and I chose leadership because through working in a corporate environment, I realized that the leadership are really the people who make the decisions that impact the rest of the employees' level of happiness. And also the positive psychology is really exciting for me because it's fairly new in the American Psychological Association. It was just adopted in 1998. And it's the first time in history that psychology has decided to focus on the positive side of things, like what is going right. Let's study the best instead of the pathology or the worst. So it really is exciting for me because it gives me a theoretical stance to do the work that I'm doing in organizations through happiness. So I am getting a PhD to be on the professional side of happiness. Did you know that we have a constitutional right to be happy? I asked myself, what am I doing to be happy? Well, one thing in my personal life that I'm doing I'm trying to make other people happy, strangers. So I try to make them smile just by smiling at them, by asking how their day was, just by being nice. And it's amazing what a little bit will really take to get someone to actually be happy. I've had some good results. For instance, another example would be yesterday I was standing outside of my friend's house and I was talking on the phone to another friend. I was watching this fairly attractive woman unload boxes up and down from her car into her apartment, and I was watching her for like 5 minutes. I was on the phone, and then I decided that while I was waiting for my other friend, I was just going to ask the woman if she needed any assistance with her boxes. So that made her happy, and she smiled, and I made a new friend also just by being nice. It's amazing what being nice can do to people's levels of happiness. Let's see, for my friends and family, I give neck and shoulder rubs, and that seems to make them very happy. Also, the other day I was walking in a bookstore, and I found these two cute little books that were called I Love You, Grandma. And so I bought 2 books and sent them to my grandmothers just because I love them. Just not because it's their birthday, not because it's a holiday, but just because I wanted them to get something special in the mail. But I also want to encourage you, though, that you don't need money to smile at strangers. You don't need money to help a woman with her boxes, going up the stairs. Another trick that I do to help myself be happy is I fill my life with things that make me happy. For instance, I'm going to graduate school, and that's really challenging, and that helps me with my academic stimulation. That makes me happy in a subject. I learn a lot about subjects that I enjoy. I'm assisting with the happiness show with George and Lionel, and I'm also working on my own happiness show out here in San Francisco, but it's going to be called The Happy Zone. So eventually we'll be up and running with that. We're working out a few logistics because I've never produced a television show before. Let's see, I also have my own coaching company which helps other people get to their goals in life, a positive uplift, if you will, towards fulfilling their own goals. So that is exciting for me and challenging for me makes me happy to be able to help other people fulfill their goals and dreams. I also am working on a business that is associating leadership effective behaviors with the skill of happiness, because at this point, through socialization and through maturity, I believe that happiness really actually is indeed a skill. It is not something. I mean, it is something we have to work on, something we have to schedule in, if you will. For my clients, I encourage them to schedule 30 minutes or so, at least a day, to do something that makes them happy, because that will help increase their levels of happiness. Recently, I started the Happiness Club out here in San Francisco, the California chapter, and our first meeting was last month, and that was really exciting. Because a lot of people got together that didn't know each other, and we all talked about happiness, and it was a great way to meet other people who were happy. And also, but I have to tell you that you don't have to be happy in order to come to the meeting, although you might probably, in fact, I almost guarantee that you will be happier when you leave the doors. But in relation to the Happiness Club, I wanted to tell you that I made this happiness decision, which is located at happinessclub.com, and it was crafted by Lionel Ketchian, the founder of the Happiness Club, along with Glenn Ketchian and Thomas Finelli, and I'd like to read it to you. The happiness decision. I, Amy Branch, do solemnly decide to adopt the happiness decision by being happy now. Rather than react to my problems, I will use happiness to respond to them, forsaking all negative thoughts. Regardless of circumstances, in all ways I will choose happiness for the rest of my life. Now, Lionel says that happiness is really just a one-step program. It's not a 12-step program. It's not a 24-step program. It's just one step you just have to choose or to decide to be happy. And this happiness decision is located on my refrigerator, so it helps remind me that I've decided to be happy. And I've been having a good time being happy. You know, being happy is not bad. I have lots of friends. I'm very satisfied in all areas of my life, but it's because I fulfill my time with things that make me happy, as you can see. So I wanted to encourage you to look at your own life and see what it is that you do to fulfill your time. Does it make you happy? This is Amy Branch signing off from San Francisco, and I hope you join us next time on The Happiness Show. Bye.
Happiness is powerful, it's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny, so let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Let's be so very happy.